Our goal for today is to both be able to describe what these if-else statements are doing and eventually to write one ourselves. So the example code that we have right here is broken down in this assignment for 4.4 notes in the exact same way as we've done before. It's checking our variable named answer to see if it meets a certain condition, in this case, Mr. Sutton, completing this task, saying, yep, he checks out if it does. And if it doesn't, doing this instead. That's the basic functioning of how an if-else statements work. And it's a way of responding to user input, doing something different depending on what someone writes. Cleverbot responds in different ways depending on what you type in. Almost every website that's out there, including our ID checker, will have some sort of if-else statement in it that allows it to work properly. With this knowledge, I think you're ready to answer questions number 2 and 3 on the Google form. We just came up with a way of explaining what if-else statements are doing. I've got one example in number 2 right here, where it asks you to explain that in your own words. And also, I'd like you to identify the name of the variable in this if-else statement, since that's something that we learned about how to do last class. Go ahead and pause your video. Use the 4.4 notes on Haiku if it's helpful to you. Answer questions number 2 and 3 on the form. And when you feel like you're ready, you can explain those yourself. Feel free to hit play again, and we'll keep moving on. The goal of today, as you just did, is to describe what an if-else statement might be doing. Okay? If-else statements are always going to take on the following structure. If you ever want to write one yourself, we'll see the word if. We'll have some parentheses where it's checking to see if something is true. 2 important notes about checking if something is true. We always use double equal signs. And whatever message you're checking it against is always going to be in quotes. We'll insert what we want the code to do if it's true, and put another little squiggly bracket at the bottom right now. We'll write the word else down here. And we'll put in between our 2 squiggly brackets what we want it to do if that condition is not met, or that condition is not true. We're going to try to write ourselves our own if-else statement by the end of class today. So let's see if we can do a little bit of practice first. If you've got one handy, go ahead and pull out a whiteboard, a notebook, anything with a piece of paper. And I want to see if you can use that format to write your own if-else statement. Create an if-else statement that reads a variable named color. If color is equal to red, print the words, that's the correct color, the ID named. If color isn't equal to red, print the words, not the correct color, the ID named. Pause your video. I'll work through this one together after you've tried it yourself. Then we'll do one more on our own to finish up our lesson for today. So you just attempted to write your own if-else statement using the structure that we learned about in class today. We said our structure is always going to start this way. We're going to have an if followed by parentheses with some squiggly brackets. Whatever we want to happen if the condition's true, we'll go inside that first set of squiggly brackets. Then we'll put an else with some squiggly brackets, and whatever we want to happen if it's false will happen inside these squiggly brackets. The first thing we always want to do when we're writing an if-else statement is to find our variable name. In this case, it's color. And I'm checking if color is equal to something inside of my parentheses at the top. In this case, I'm checking if it's equal to red. So I'm always going to put double equal signs. I'm going to put my answer that I'm checking it against in quotes. If color equals red. Our description tells us that if color equals red, I want to print the words that's the correct color to the ID named heading. So the way that I use JavaScript to print to a heading is document.getElementById. That's your ID name. I'm changing the text. So it's going to be .enter HTML. and I want to say now, if color isn't equal to red, we want to put that's not the correct color, the ID name heading. So inside of my else statement is always going to be what happens if color isn't equal. What I want it to be. And that's the basic structure of how we make an if else statement that will check if user input is equal to a given value. This solution also exists at the bottom of your note G and is one example of how to translate words into statements. We're ready to try it on our own for our last little component of our assignment for today. If you go to the bottom of your Google form, you'll see the following web link that you can copy and paste. The web link is also available at 2C, the CodePen template for number 4. And you're going to do here exactly what you did for your last example over here. We're only going to edit some JavaScript. Here's a little software that could be a basic math homework helper that will tell you whether you got an answer right or not. Say 2 plus 2 is 4. We want to make a software where when you click it, it tells you in this results space whether you're right or not. And you're going to write your code inside of the function make changes. In the space below, define a variable that reads from the input box with ID name answer. Here's my input box with ID name answer over here. And use an if else statement to check whether the person has put in the correct answer to 2 plus 2. If they successfully put in 4, print an affirmative message to the paragraph with ID name check. That's over here in HTML. If they don't, print it in. So you're going to copy and make, just like in our example, lines number 1 through 5 of code, like the ones that were available in our notes. But you're going to edit it so it meets the specifications of this assignment right here. This is the hardest part of the assignment. Feel free to reach out if you have questions. Now, on some of the other assignments that I've received, what some people have been doing is copying example code and then pasting it and then editing it, which is fine, but you'll probably notice something kind of weird, like Mr. Sutton shows up in half yellow and half purple. That's because you'll notice that the quotation marks when you copy from Microsoft Word are different than when you write them yourselves in JavaScript. So if you're going to copy code from someone else, you actually have to go back and change all of the quotation marks, which shouldn't be a big deal. I just want you guys to know that it won't work unless you change your quotation marks so that they're right. And of course, there's other elements of this code that you'll have to change in a working if else statement. Before you start coding, you'll notice the use this template button shows up here at the bottom. You won't be able to edit my document. If you try to submit it, you'll just send your own. So hit the use this template button. Give it a name like 4.4 IP. Save your code right off the bat. Once you've made your edits and changes, you can copy it from the top and throw your answer into 4.4 so I can see that you've done it. Last but not least for today, if you've completed that, then you finished up all of the new content for this course for the year. Now, I think we're going to have a lot of fun in the last 5 weeks. But we're going to have our last little quiz of the year on Monday and Tuesday. We'll have an open note quiz. Your last question on the IP for tonight reminds you of that. It asks you to ask me one question so that I can respond with some ideas or feedback on how you can help prepare yourself. If you look under 5, all of the notes from this unit and all of the practice problems in Google Form are available right here so that you might be able to see what our little quiz will be like. You'll have the chance to take it whenever you want on Monday or Tuesday. So that way you can kind of study how you please. Thanks for joining today. Thanks for working hard again on something that's pretty complex. Please reach out if you have questions, and good luck. Have a great day.